Welcome to Starlight Sci-Fi, the channel where imagination meets the stars. Buckle up for a journey into the extraordinary, where humanity faces the unknown, and the impossible becomes reality. Subscribe for more galactic tales. A single human battleship, bristling with advanced weaponry, enters the Galactic Council's home system, an impenetrable bastion defended by fleets from 38 different species. Within hours, the Council surrenders without a single shot being fired. What could drive an entire galactic civilization to its knees against a solitary Earth vessel? This is the story of courage, innovation, and the terrifying power of the human spirit. For centuries, the Galactic Council stood as the supreme governing body of the galaxy, a coalition of 38 advanced species that maintained order through sheer technological and military superiority. Its word was law, and dissent was a concept long buried in the history of other species. Membership in the Council was a privilege, granted only to civilizations that reached a certain threshold of technological advancement and political stability. When humanity met those criteria, it was admitted grudgingly, with whispers of doubt echoing through the chambers. To the Council, humanity was a wild-card and upstart species from a backwater star system that had advanced rapidly but lacked the centuries of experience and tradition other members claimed. Despite their reservations, Earth's entry into the Council was celebrated on Earth as a monumental achievement. At last, humanity had a voice among the stars. But the harmony was short-lived. The cracks in this supposed utopia began to show when a mining dispute erupted on the frontier. Humanity had claimed resource-rich asteroids in a region long neglected by the Council. However, a neighboring species, the Korath, coveted the same region and filed a formal grievance with the Council. What should have been a minor diplomatic matter spiraled into a deadly confrontation when the Council authorized the Korath to forcibly reclaim the territory. The Korath launched an unprovoked attack on the human mining colonies, wiping out entire settlements in hours. Millions of civilians perished in the assault. Earth's delegates, horrified, demanded justice in the Council chambers. Yet their pleas were met with indifference. The Council ruled the Korath were within their rights, citing ancient territorial agreements that predated humanity's entry into the galactic community. It was clear the Council had no interest in defending a fledgling member species. This betrayal ignited fury across Earth. Protests erupted worldwide, uniting humanity in its outrage. The names of the lost colonies became rallying cries for vengeance. Leaders debated their next move should humanity wage an unwinnable war or continue fighting through diplomacy. For many, the answer was neither. Instead, humanity chose a path no one in the galaxy anticipated. In secret, Earth's greatest minds and resources were funneled into a single project: the construction of the HSS Eternity. It was a vessel unlike anything the galaxy had seen, designed not only to match the Council's might but to surpass it in ways they couldn't imagine. The project was shrouded in mystery, its details known only to a select few. 1 year later, the HSS Eternity emerged from the void and entered the heart of Council space, the home system of the Galactic Council itself. No formal declaration preceded its arrival, no warnings issued. The Council's capital world, Avilion, lay beneath its shadow, surrounded by fleets that had never known defeat. Then, a transmission from the human ship silenced every communication channel. Surrender your authority, or face annihilation. It was not a threat. It was a promise and the beginning of humanity's reckoning. The HSS Eternity entered the Avilion system with all the subtlety of a thunderstorm. The Galactic Council capital was a fortress by design, protected by massive orbital defenses and a fleet unmatched in size and firepower. Hundreds of warships, representing the combined military might of 38 member species, patrolled the system, their presence a constant reminder of the Council's absolute dominance. No one had ever dared challenge the sanctity of this stronghold until now. The human battleship was an anomaly, even to the Council's advanced sensors. At first glance, it was unremarkable in size, no larger than the dreadnoughts that formed the backbone of the Council's navy. But every scan of the ship returned confusing, incomplete data. Its hull was composed of an unknown alloy that seemed to defy every known law of energy absorption. It absorbed heat, light, and even electromagnetic radiation without emitting so much as a ripple in response. The Council's admirals reacted immediately, deploying a massive response force to intercept the vessel. Hundreds of ships converged on the Eternity, forming an impenetrable blockade. Standard procedure dictated that the human ship be given one warning to retreat before being destroyed, but unease rippled through the ranks. The Eternity had not arrived by accident. Its presence was deliberate, a calculated act of defiance. Despite this, the Council's confidence was unshaken. Their fleets had subjugated rebellions, crushed pirate armadas, and repelled external threats for centuries. To them, the Eternity was a fool's gambit at last, desperate show of defiance from an inferior species. But the ship did not behave as expected. When hailed, it gave no response. It didn't slow its approach or adjust its trajectory. It moved with a steady, deliberate purpose, heading straight for the Council's orbital platform. As it neared the blockade, the Eternity activated a gravitational field unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. The first ships in its path faltered, their engines straining against an invisible force. The gravity field was precise and localized, dragging vessels out of formation without damaging them. Commanders scrambled to regain control, but their ships were now at the mercy of the Eternity. One by one, warships found themselves drifting, their systems overwhelmed by the gravitational anomalies. Panic rippled through the fleet. The Eternity had yet to fire a single shot, yet it was already dismantling the Council's formation with terrifying ease. The ship's systems emitted no recognizable energy signatures, and its movements defied prediction. It was as if humanity had rewritten the rules of warfare entirely. The Council admirals ordered an immediate escalation. Hundreds of ships opened fire, unleashing a torrent of energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles. The void between them lit up in a dazzling display of destruction. Yet, when the barrage reached the Eternity, the weapons vanished. Energy dissipated into nothingness, absorbed by the ship's mysterious hull, while physical projectiles either disintegrated or veered off course as if guided by an unseen hand. For the first time in centuries, the Council's fleet faced an enemy it could neither understand nor harm. The HSS Eternity moved forward, unscathed and unyielding, its silent advance a stark contrast to the chaos around it. The message was clear: this was not a skirmish, nor was it a battle. It was a demonstration, one that would reshape the galaxy forever. The HSS Eternity was more than a warship. It was a technological enigma, the culmination of humanity's most brilliant minds, working under the shadow of desperation. While the Galactic Council dismissed humanity as a brash and impulsive species, Earth had been quietly preparing for a day when it might have to stand alone. The Eternity was born of that grim foresight. Decades before its construction, humanity had realized that conventional warfare would never allow them to compete with the Council. Even Earth's most advanced ships would be no match for the combined might of 38 species, each bringing centuries, sometimes millennia, of technological refinement to the table. But humanity had one advantage: its unique way of thinking. Where the Council relied on tradition and the slow progression of science, humanity thrived on innovation and lateral problem-solving. The Eternity was designed to exploit the Council's greatest weakness, its predictability. The ship was built around technologies the Council deemed impossible, theoretical constructs dismissed as mere thought experiments. Humanity, unburdened by centuries of dogma, had turned those theories into reality. At the heart of the Eternity was its power source, a quantum singularity reactor. While the Council's ships relied on fusion and antimatter for energy, humanity had taken a far riskier path. By harnessing the immense gravitational energy of a controlled micro-black hole, the Eternity had access to virtually limitless power. This energy fed its defensive systems, allowing the ship to create localized distortions in space-time to absorb or deflect incoming attacks. Its hull, composed of a newly discovered alloy named Oblivium, was a marvel in its own right. Oblivium was not merely resistant to damage, it absorbed energy and radiation, converting them into additional power for the ship. This meant that every attack against the Eternity only strengthened it. The alloy's development had been an accident, a result of human scientists experimenting with synthetic materials in zero-gravity environments. The ship's weapons were equally groundbreaking. Chief among them was the Singularity Cannon, a weapon capable of creating and directing micro-black holes. These black holes could destroy targets with surgical precision, erasing them from existence without collateral damage. Complementing this was a railgun system capable of launching projectiles at near light speeds, bypassing most forms of shielding. Yet the Eternity did not rely solely on firepower. Its true strength lay in its intelligence. The ship's artificial intelligence, Aegis, was a sentient entity designed to operate autonomously. Unlike the rigid AIs used by the Council, Aegis could think creatively, adapt to new situations, and predict enemy actions with astonishing accuracy. Its neural network had been trained on centuries of human history, from ancient naval battles to modern conflicts, allowing it to identify and exploit weaknesses the Council hadn't even considered. But the most terrifying aspect of the Eternity wasn't its weapons or defenses, it was its ability to wage psychological warfare. The ship carried an arsenal of information warfare tools capable of disrupting enemy communications, overriding targeting systems, and even implanting false data into enemy networks. It could cripple an entire fleet without firing a shot, as the Council was beginning to realize. The Eternity had not been designed to win battles, it had been designed to win wars before they even began. It was a ship built for deterrence, a vessel that would force any adversary to think twice before challenging humanity. As it moved unscathed through the heart of the Council's defenses, the Eternity was not just a symbol of humanity's defiance, it was proof that humanity had outgrown the role of a lesser species. The Council, for all its arrogance, had underestimated the one force it could never truly comprehend: human ingenuity. The Galactic Council's fleet was vast, its strength built on the combined resources of dozens of species. Each warship was a masterpiece of engineering, bristling with weapons designed to devastate planets and obliterate entire fleets. For centuries, the Council had relied on this overwhelming force to maintain order across the galaxy. Rebellions were quashed before they began, and no external threat dared challenge their supremacy. So when the HSS Eternity appeared unannounced, the admirals of the Council were not afraid. Annoyed, perhaps, at the audacity of a single human vessel entering the system, but not afraid. They believed their fleet's size and firepower alone would crush this insolent display. Hundreds of ships maneuvered into formation around the Eternity, their weapons primed. From the smallest corvettes to massive dreadnoughts, the Council's navy represented the pinnacle of their collective military might. Orders were issued, warnings broadcasted, and targeting systems locked onto the human ship. Still, the Eternity made no move to retreat. When the command came to fire, the void between ships erupted in a kaleidoscope of destruction. Energy beams of every frequency and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the human vessel, their combined firepower capable of annihilating any known enemy. The Eternity sat motionless as the wave of destruction approached. And then nothing. The weapons vanished as they neared the ship, dissolving into harmless streams of energy. Projectiles that should have ripped through the Eternity's hull either disintegrated mid-flight or veered off course, as though pushed by an invisible hand. The Eternity's defenses, invisible to the eye, were far beyond the understanding of the Council. A moment of silence fell across the fleet. Then, confusion turned to panic as ships began experiencing strange malfunctions. Engines sputtered and failed, leaving massive warships adrift in space. Targeting systems, once locked onto the human vessel, now showed ghost signals, dozens of false targets scattered across their displays. Communications descended into chaos, the channels filled with static or strange, garbled transmissions that no one could decipher. The Eternity had activated a suite of electronic warfare systems designed to cripple the Council's fleet without ever firing a shot. Waves of disruptive signals cascaded through the enemy's networks, bypassing firewalls and scrambling critical systems. Ships that relied on precision coordination were suddenly isolated, their crews shouting in confusion as the chain of command broke down. The illusion of the Council's invincibility began to crack. Admirals barked orders that never reached their subordinates. Entire squadrons drifted out of formation, powerless and disoriented. Some captains, desperate to regain control, ordered their ships to retreat, only to find their navigation systems had been overwritten. Through it all, the Eternity remained silent. It did not retaliate or exploit the chaos it had caused. It didn't need to. The Council's fleet, once an unassailable force, was now a scattered mess of powerless vessels. The psychological impact was devastating. The Council's admirals had always operated with the belief that their strength was absolute, that no single enemy could ever pose a real threat. But now, Facing an adversary they couldn't even touch, that confidence shattered. For the first time in centuries, fear gripped the hearts of the Council's leaders. Their fleet had been rendered helpless by a single ship. The realization was dawning across the system. The Eternity was not here to win a battle. It was here to deliver a message, one the Council was only beginning to understand. Humanity had no intention of bowing to the Council's authority. And if this demonstration was any indication, humanity no longer needed to. The Galactic Council's fortress world, Avelion, had never known vulnerability. It was the jewel of the galaxy, the heart of the Council's power, and a monument to its unchallenged rule. Orbiting above it was the Council's central command station, a sprawling network of platforms, defense grids, and weaponized satellites that ensured no threat could reach the planet's surface. Avelion's defenses had been designed to withstand an invasion from an armada. Against the HSS Eternity, however, they were utterly useless. As the human warship advanced, the station's defense commanders scrambled to activate every countermeasure at their disposal. Automated turrets came to life, spitting streams of plasma and railgun rounds. Orbital missile platforms launched salvo after salvo, targeting the Eternity with precision-guided warheads capable of tearing apart entire fleets. Yet none of it mattered. The Eternity's gravitational field absorbed and deflected every attack, rendering the station's defenses impotent. Energy weapons dissipated harmlessly against the ship's hull, while missiles spiraled off course, detonating in empty space. The Council's most advanced targeting systems, which had never failed in battle, were reduced to useless displays of flickering static. For the first time in recorded history, the Council's leadership found themselves defenseless. Within the command station, panic spread like wildfire. The Council's representatives, proud members of species that once believed themselves untouchable, watched in horror as the ship continued its relentless approach. They had dismissed humanity as an upstart race. Yet now, their very survival rested on the whims of this solitary vessel. The Council was accustomed to control. Its power was built on the certainty that no species could challenge its authority. Diplomacy was wielded like a weapon, and military force was the ultimate deterrent. Yet the Eternity had shattered that illusion. This was no reckless act of defiance. It was a calculated demonstration of power, one that exposed the fragility of the Council's rule. As the Eternity reached the inner orbit of Avelion, the Council's desperation grew. They activated the last wall, an ancient planetary shield designed to protect the surface from orbital bombardment. The shield was a marvel of engineering, an impenetrable energy barrier that had withstood centuries of testing and upgrades. It was their final line of defense. The Eternity did not flinch. Instead, it unleashed its most devastating weapon, the Singularity Cannon. A black hole the size of a grain of sand formed in an instant, directed with precision at the planetary shield. For a moment, the shield flared brilliantly, its energy output spiking as it struggled to resist the gravitational pull. Then, with a soundless ripple, the shield collapsed, its energy siphoned into the Singularity before it deflated entirely. The Council leaders, watching from the surface in their orbital platforms, were stunned into silence. The shield that had protected them for centuries was gone, dismantled in seconds by a weapon they couldn't begin to understand. The Eternity hovered above Avelion, its presence a silent proclamation that the galaxy's status quo had ended. But the ship did not fire on the planet. It did not unleash destruction on the Council's cities or target its population centers. Instead, it remained motionless, its quiet defiance louder than any attack. This was not a war, it was a reckoning. The Council leaders, for all their arrogance, were finally forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had underestimated humanity. What they had dismissed as a young and impulsive race had become their greatest threat, a species that refused to be subjugated. And now, as the HSS Eternity loomed over their world, the Council understood the magnitude of their mistake. Their certainty, their power, their unchallenged dominance had all been an illusion, shattered by a single ship. The HSS Eternity remained a silent sentinel above Avelion, its ominous presence casting a shadow not only over the planet, but over the very foundation of the Galactic Council's rule. The ship's lack of action was deliberate every moment. It lingered without striking, was a calculated move, designed to force the Council to confront their vulnerability. Inside the Council chambers on Avelion, chaos reigned. The representatives of the 38-member species were accustomed to wielding unassailable power, dictating terms to the galaxy with absolute authority. Now their unity was fracturing. Some argued for immediate surrender, while others demanded retaliation, clinging to the delusion that their remaining forces could overcome the Eternity. A few even suggested fleeing to distant systems, abandoning their seats of power in a desperate bid to regroup. Amidst the shouting and finger-pointing, one truth was unavoidable. The Eternity was not merely a ship, it was a statement. It carried with it the weight of a species that had been pushed too far, one that had refused to bow to the Council's arrogance. What the Council failed to realize was that the Eternity wasn't here to conquer, it was here to negotiate. Humanity had no interest in destroying Avelian or plunging the galaxy into chaos. The ship's purpose was not to wage war, but to force a reckoning, one that would reshape the balance of power forever. The Eternity's appearance was the culmination of years of careful planning. While the Council had been distracted by its internal squabbles and petty disputes, humanity had been preparing for this exact moment. They understood the Council's tactics, its reliance on overwhelming force, and its inability to adapt to unforeseen threats. Humanity's gamble was that the Council would falter when faced with an opponent it couldn't comprehend or control. And falter it did. The Council's fleets, its planetary defenses, even its vaunted last wall, all had crumbled without the Eternity firing more than a single, precise shot. The psychological impact of this was devastating. For centuries, the Council had projected an image of invincibility, one that kept member species in line through fear and intimidation. Now, that image was in ruins, replaced by the stark reality of their vulnerability. But humanity's gamble wasn't without risk. The Eternity represented the pinnacle of Earth's technological and military achievements, but it was still just one ship. If the Council managed to regroup, to rally its fleets, and mount a coordinated counterattack, humanity could be overwhelmed. Earth's leaders had debated this possibility endlessly, weighing the odds of survival against the necessity of standing up to the Council's tyranny. In the end, they had chosen Defiance. To live under the Council's thumb, to allow humanity to be treated as a lesser species, was no longer an option. The Eternity was a message to the galaxy that humanity would not be silenced, no matter the cost. The Council, for all its bluster, was beginning to understand this. Its representatives, accustomed to issuing ultimatums, now found themselves on the receiving end of one. The Eternity's silence was deafening, its unspoken demand impossible to ignore. Surrender your authority, or face annihilation. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Council faced an existential crisis, not from an external threat, but from within. Humanity had turned their own arrogance against them, using the Council's complacency as a weapon. The balance of power was shifting, and the Council was powerless to stop it. As the Eternity hovered above Avelian, unmoving and unyielding, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity's gambit was clear. They were not here to ask for recognition. They were here to take it. Above Avelian, the HSS Eternity remained still, a silent monument to humanity's audacity. Its imposing silhouette against the backdrop of the Council's most fortified world spoke volumes, without uttering a single word. Across the galaxy, the ripple effects of its arrival spread like wildfire. Broadcasts of the Council's mighty fleet, rendered helpless against a single human warship, were transmitted to every corner of civilized space. Species once cowed into submission by the Council's authority began to question everything they had been taught. The Council's response was fractured and chaotic. The proud assembly of species that once ruled through unity now found themselves divided. The more pragmatic representatives saw the futility of resistance. They understood that even if the Council's fleets regrouped and attacked en masse, the Eternity could dismantle them as easily as it had done before. The ship's unprecedented technology had rendered their combined military might irrelevant. Others clung to their pride, unwilling to accept that humanity, a species they had considered inferior, could hold them hostage. But even they hesitated to call for war. The sight of their strongest defenses falling apart had shaken them to the core, planting seeds of doubt in even the most stubborn hearts. Humanity, for its part, had no desire for conquest. The Eternity had not arrived to replace the Council as the galaxy's new oppressor. Its mission was singular: to demand equality and freedom. For centuries, the Council had dictated terms to younger species, exploiting their resources, subjugating their people, and denying them representation. Humanity's defiance was not just for Earth, it was for every species that had suffered under the Council's iron rule. The silence was broken by the Eternity itself. Without warning, a massive hologram was projected into space, visible from the surface of Avalion and beyond. It depicted the galaxy, a sprawling map of stars and systems. With one crucial change, humanity's place in it was no longer a small, forgotten corner. Earth's star burned brightly, a beacon of defiance that demanded recognition. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer a subject of the Council, it was an equal. And if the Council refused to acknowledge this, the consequences would be catastrophic. Faced with no other options, the Council finally capitulated. In an emergency session held on Avalion, the representatives voted to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Council, with equal standing to the founding species. But the changes did not stop there. The shockwaves of the Eternity's arrival forced the Council to confront its flaws, to acknowledge the arrogance and corruption that had allowed it to stagnate for centuries. In the weeks that followed, other species began to speak out, emboldened by humanity's victory. Long-simmering grievances surfaced, and the Council found itself facing demands for reform from every corner of the galaxy. What had begun as a standoff with a single ship had grown into a revolution. The HSS Eternity became a symbol of change, its name etched into history as the ship that reshaped the galaxy. For humanity, it was a triumph, but also a reminder of the weight of responsibility that came with power. They had fought not to dominate, but to coexist, and now they stood as leaders in a new era of galactic unity. As the Eternity finally departed Avalion's orbit, its mission complete, the galaxy looked toward the future with cautious hope. The old ways were crumbling, replaced by the promise of something greater. Humanity had not just silenced the Galactic Council, it had awakened the galaxy to the possibility of a better tomorrow. And so the story of the HSS Eternity became legend, a testament to the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to be ignored. For in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity had done what no one thought possible. It had changed the course of history. Thanks for watching Starlight Sci-Fi. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible tales from the stars. Share your thoughts below. How do you think humanity would fare in a galactic showdown? See you next time, and keep reaching for the stars.